Hey everyone, and welcome back. I hope this video interests you all. So, this video is a bit out of the ordinary. I'll be doing my top 5 favourite tracks in BFBB Rehydrated. To clarify, this video is also sprinkled with some personal preference, so these are somewhat opinionated. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 5, Jellyfish Fields. Now this is at the bottom of the list for two reasons. This has been placed so low for the fact that at roughly 1 minute and 17 seconds in, the remastered strum goes out of sync. And it's things like that that are make or break situations for me. Now the next reason is that in terms of remastering, it hasn't had a whole lot of work done on it, but it still sounds good enough to be in the top 5. But in fact, I think this is actually the shortest one on the list, so let's get on with number 4. Coming in at number 4 is Kelp Caves. For those who don't know, in the original game, Kelp Caves track is literally kelp forest but slowed down 50%, and in Rehydrated they knew exactly what they were doing, I must admit. Kelp Caves in Rehydrated surprisingly fills the ears, and it actually makes the listening experience much fuller and more immersive than in the original. They've ended up adding some extra instrumentation to the track in the form of bells, and I like the new addition. It sort of gives the track more freedom overall, which is sort of what this track needed, because it felt more confined in the original. The consistency of all 15 tracks in the remake is very off, but Kelp Caves has managed to stay high on the list in terms of overall quality. I'm actually very shocked that this track, out of all the others, has managed to keep up its quality, so I'm going to have to give the remaster some credit on this. Now, on to number 3. Coming in at third place is Downtown. This track was, in my opinion, good enough to reach the top 3 for staying tried and true to the original track's overall feel. The fake stereo in this track is admittedly inconsistent throughout, but it makes up for that with the remastered version, using similar instruments to that of the original, which is something I respect the mixer for doing. The bass and the snares throughout the track are also something that I instantly picked up on, as they sort of gave me a nostalgic feel that the original manages to do. So that sort of baffled me. When we found out that this soundtrack was going to get remastered, I didn't think that they could replicate the feel of the original tracks, but this track proved me wrong. This track is proof that these tracks can be remastered while keeping that 2003 feel that they had all that time ago. Now, let's head on to number 2. Number 2, Dutchmans Graveyard. Now, this track sort of caught me by surprise, as they have reworked little parts of the track that I didn't really expect them to even sort of glance at. The track's general bass line was built on top of, which sounds pretty good, as well as some fancy new sounds dotted around at the track's introduction, which I feel like it gives it a whole new lease of life, and it sort of makes you feel like you're actually in a creepy, desolate graveyard. The original track had these sort of twinkling sound effects spotted around the actual track, which in some areas have been improved on as a whole, which is a total shock, but a welcome addition nonetheless. This track was very well done, and it was almost close to taking the number 1 spot if I'm honest. Before I go ahead and get to the number 1 track, here are a few honourable mentions. The first one is Rock Bottom. This track would have gotten first place on my list, as the amount of reworking that has gone into this track is possibly the most out of all these tracks. I was very tempted to put this at the top, but then I sort of felt like that there was some room for improvement in that track. The other honourable mention is the hub track. This track has vastly improved from the Downtown trailer of which we heard it in first, so it's great to hear that improvements were made down the line. Personally, Graveyard stuck the landing better than the hub track, but that's all down to personal preference. Now, let's get on to number 1. Number 1, which is the Dream track. This track deserves first place for the fact that with this remaster, it's been given a brand new lease of life, and I even want to say more so than every single other track. Initially I had the hub track track in first place, but then I realised that was more opinionated and not really objective when it came to that track. But with the remastered Dream track, the person who has obviously mixed this has added so many new things like a brand new bass line, there's more ambience, there's a lot more percussion in both audio channels, there's breathtaking new instrumentals that are just dotted around everywhere, and it just sounds so much more crisp. I can't quite put my finger on what makes this track so magnificent, but I just know that this track has had a ton of love and passion poured into it, possibly more so than all the other tracks. If you're on the fence as to whether you should get the soundtrack, it is 100% worth the money. So with that being said, let me know what you think of the list down below, and also let me know what your favourite track from Rehydrated is. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all later.